Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, November 10th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Jeet Heer, National Affairs correspondent for The Nation, to look back on this, well, I guess mixed week that was. Also on the program, Israel rejects a ceasefire for hostage deal. The U.S. wants the Palestinian Authority to run Gaza, presumably after Israel levels the place.
What about what people in Gaza think? That's irrelevant, I guess.
Palestinian
Democracy.
Authority will say they will for a U.S. commitment to a two-state solution. Israel hits a Shifa hospital compound multiple times, housing internal refugees, as the Palestinian death toll tops at least 11,000. Biden warned by U.S. diplomats of growing fury amongst Arab world toward the United States. Not to mention that U.S. aid letter involving 1,000 State Department employees expressing their outrage. SAG-AFTRA National Board to meet as we speak over the tentative strike-ending deal. Vegas culinary workers and bartenders strike a deal with MGM. In time for the Formula One racing, Mike Johnson's continuing resolution plan has gone limp with just 7 days from the government shutdown. Nothing?
Oh,
right.
Yes.
Manchin
His
will
son
not-
is so proud. He's fully limp, just like God intended.
Manchin will
I got
not
to
run
it.
again in 2024. DOJ says Alabama cannot prosecute people who help abortion seekers leave the state. And congrats, folks. You have now lived through the 12 hottest months on record on the entire planet Earth. And a new Greenland study shows ominous signs for sea level rise. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Casual Friday. Emma Vigland. Well, actually,
I honestly wore my most collared shirt today.
I was going to say, I look over it, and it occurs to me, like, I don't know what you're doing.
I put it on today, and I thought, I'm going to get some grief for this, but, you know, the laundry's piled up, and I don't really have much of them.
I like when you have to dress up because all of your casual clothes are dirty.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
You will undoubtedly hear something from HR, but
I know.
I'll
I
leave
breached
that
my
to-
contract.
I'll leave that to the HR folks. Folks, just a note. In 2 hours and 38 minutes, I will be on the Labor Valley Report. They're doing I think it's a 32-hour stream to raise money for their strike funds. And it's a great show. If you're not familiar with what Jacob and Adam do over there. And I mean, it's a, did I say Labor Valley Report?
Valley Labor
Valley Labor Report.
I was
It
just
is
gonna
a,
let it slide.
Oh, thanks. It is a great report on what's happening in terms of labor.
They're also on a conservative radio station at like 6 or something in the morning.
Down in
That's amazing.
Alabama, and great resource for, we get people asking us a lot of times, like, I want to organize my shop, or I want to talk to other people. They're a great resource for you to check out if you are interested, but also just in broadly, if you're interested in labor issues. I will be there at 2:45 Eastern time for about an hour. So check it out. We will put the links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. You don't hear much more about the sort of the controversy of the number of fatalities that is coming out of Gaza. We don't hear, well, you can't really trust these numbers anymore.
Hamas numbers, even though we trusted them all the way up to October 7th, but now it's Hamas numbers.
And
Hamas numbers.
And again, the Hamas administers Gaza, and the Ministry of Health are not fighters. I mean, this concept of like a military wing of an administration or a group, and a political wing or administrative one being distinct. I mean, this is not something that we've had trouble accepting in other contexts. But just so that we can put a fine note on Joe Biden saying, like, I don't know if we can trust these Hamas numbers on casualties, here is Barbara Leaf. She is the Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs at the House Foreign Affairs Committee, being asked a question by Representative Nathaniel Moran, Republican from Texas. And he asked, can we trust those numbers? And she says, well, sort of, but not necessarily in the way that we have been told to believe.
The gentleman from Texas. Ladies, I want to ask you about, first of all, the Gaza Ministry of Health, the information we're getting from them, and what really appears to be some reliance on them for information I'm not so sure is correct. I want to just go through a few things, because over a number of years, through several conflicts, numerous bloody skirmishes between Israel and Hamas, UN agencies, as you know, and others have cited the Gaza Health Ministry's death tolls in regular reports. The International Committee of the Red Cross and the Palestinian Red Crescent also use these numbers or rely on these numbers, as does the United Nations. Several news publications cite numbers from Hamas for their data, but frankly, I'm a little skeptical about the data that's coming out. Both President Biden and the National Security Council spokesman John Kirby have been publicly skeptical of the Gaza Health Ministry's numbers and called them, quote, unreliable due to its control by Hamas. And I agree with that. Tell me a little bit about the types of propaganda. I'll start with Assistant Secretary Leaf, that Hamas or other Iranian-backed proxies are spreading using either the Ministry of Health or other organizations located in Palestine.
So I would just say, Congressman, that Hamas is very adroit at using social media in particular to circulate its propaganda, to circulate disinformation, misinformation. On the question you cite about statistics, I would just say that in this period of conflict and conditions of war, it is very difficult for any of us to assess what the rate of casualties are. We think they're very high, frankly, and it could be that they're even higher than are being cited. We'll know only after the guns fall silent. So we take in sourcing from a variety of folks who are on the ground, and so I can't stipulate to one figure or another, but I think it's very possible that they're even higher than is being reported.
Okay. I mean, And first off, yes, Hamas is adroit at putting out social media. I got some news for you about Israel's adroitness in terms of social media as well. I think I just retweeted a tweet about the some Israel ministry trying to show that Palestinian casualties were fake by playing clips of I think a Lebanese music video or film to show, like, literally they were just showing behind the scenes of a film that existed. But put that aside for a moment. If there was even the slightest belief amongst U.S. officials that the death toll in Gaza was not 4,000 children and counting, or 11,000 people, period, civilians. If there was the slightest doubt about that figure being less, then we would have just heard it from her. But the only critique she could make about the numbers that that have been released by the health ministry in Gaza is that they may be, in fact, undercounting at this point, which, of course, all you need to do is look at the just the results of the bombardment there and think it's impossible for them to have been able to dig out bodies from that complete carnage.
It's quite clear if you have common sense, and you even can hear it from Israeli ministers who said, in Hebrew, it's very important to understand when the Israeli government, which is as adept, I would say, as, say, the Russian government in putting out disinformation on social media and doing it in a coordinated way, they have in Hebrew to a local Israeli paper, one said that they think it's closer to 20,000. And they said that about a few days ago, or nearly a week ago at this point, Human Rights Watch has confirmed those numbers coming out of the Palestinian Health Ministry at 11,000 at this point. And those are just the bodies that they can count. How many bodies are under rubble? We have no idea at this point. How many of those bodies are hostages that are under rubble, right? I mean, we talk about how the Netanyahu government rejected calls for a ceasefire, a temporary pause in the bombing so some hostages could come out. They're not showing any concern for the lives of the hostages either. And it just really goes back to these underlying racist assumptions about Palestinians. Why would the United States government trust these numbers before, but then after October 7th, in this heightened environment, say, well, we don't know if we can trust them now? I mean, is it because Hamas committed the terror attack? Sure, right? But if you can't trust Hamas's figures, right, or you can't trust the government's figures based on, I don't know, a base level of barbarity and civilian deaths, well, the Israeli government has committed those atrocities now multiple times over. So,
well, there's one reason why they do that. There's just one reason. It's because they want to diminish the pressure on Israel to cease fire, and they wanted to diminish the political pressure on the administration. There's no other. It's quite obvious. That's why when it actually, what we heard from Biden was for public consumption, and this is for consumption for people, like the tiny percentage of the American population that, digs into what's happening on C-SPAN 2 for a committee where there's 4 Congress people there, and they know they can say this. They need to deliver this stuff to Congress in a legit fashion, and they know there's very little chance of it actually making any difference, broadly speaking. But we'll talk to Jeet a little bit too about what's happening with at least Democrats hearing from their constituents in a way that is, I think, completely surprised them. And the Democratic Party is completely flat-footed on this account in terms of what to do with this. But we'll talk more to Jeet about that in a moment. But just for folks who you're having an argument with about the whether we trust the numbers coming out of Gaza, here's your clip. The U.S. government does, in fact, trust them. And if anything, they think it's an undercount.
It's absolutely an undercount. I know we're getting to Jeet in a sec, but just a reminder, 141 square mile area, more bombs dropped than we did in the entire first year in Afghanistan, a 250K square mile place.
I heard Zionists say, with all the bombing being dropped, don't you think the number should be higher with the destruction? And turns out, yeah, probably is.
All right. We'll be talking to Jeet Heer, National Affairs correspondent for The Nation, in a moment. Jeet also, does he do a podcast as well? Yeah, he does a podcast, The Time of Monsters, on for The Nation magazine. Also, another podcast you should know about. I know you care about politics. If you like our show, I think you're going to like Future Hindsight. Very easy to feel hopeless and powerless, like we can't do anything to change the status quo. But what if you could be a strategic player in politics? On Future Hindsight, Mila Atmos shows you how much power you have and how to use it. Think about it this way. If each of us could do 2% more than we are doing now, it would transform our democracy. So tune in every Thursday to get engaged and stay engaged. This week, Mila speaks to Bernard Harcourt about a new blueprint for society based on cooperation. It's an idea as big as capitalism and communism, and it might just be the most exciting thing you'll come across all day. Find them at futurehindsight.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, word from one of our favorite sponsors, sunsetlakesebede.com. Sunsetlakesebede.com. Use the coupon code LEFTISBEST. You will get 20% off of anything and everything on their website. They have tinctures. They have tinctures in 3 or 4 different strengths. They have 3 different flavors of tinctures. They have tinctures including melatonin, which is the one that...
That's how I got to sleep last night.
Yes, I've been leaning hard on this stuff. I'm not going to lie, over the past couple of weeks. But they also have smokables. They have keef. They have pre-rolls. They have flour, a bunch of different types of flour that you can enjoy on its own or to create some type of entourage effect,
Whoa.
as it were. Also, they have Sebede fudge, Sebede infused coffee, which is my weekend brew. They have Sebede lotion. I usually have some on here because, my skin gets a little bit dry. There's nothing, honestly, I've never put anything else on my body besides this.
And it helps with your eczema too, right?
Well, I use the salve for the eczema, which has arnica, and they also have one that has lidocaine, I think. So, I mean, it's really meant for your muscles, but I use it for my eczema. But sometimes I also use the tincture in my hair.
Whoa.
Yep. Check it out. They have a great product. They have great farming practices, integrated pest management. So that means that your Sebede has no pesticides in it. They use regenerative farming practices, which means that they treat the soil and the land with respect and keep it alive and thriving. They also have amazing business practices and political instincts. They have donated thousands of dollars to things like strike funds, to food pantries, to carceral reform, to refugee resettlement. They've given a bunch to give directly. They've given relief for the floods in Vermont. They're located up near Burlington. Just a great company, a great product. Check it out. 20% off. Go there now. Get 20% off. Use the code LEFTISBEST. You will not be disappointed. Oh, and you can also, the great thing about them too is that their product has integrity. You can literally look at the third-party analysis of it and know exactly what you're dealing with. All right, we're going to do a quick break. When we come back, Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation. We are back, Sam Seder, on the Majority Report with Emma Vigeland. Also, I want to welcome to the show, really excited to welcome to the show, Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation, host of the weekly Nation podcast, The Time of Monsters, and the monthly column, Morbid Symptoms, indeed. Jeet Heer, thanks so much for joining us.
It's good to be on the show.
Jeet, this is, I was just saying beforehand, we're basically going to go over the last three pieces that you've written, more or less.
That makes it easy for me.
And it really basically covers what we've been talking about to a large extent. And you write, your most recent piece was about Biden tearing his coalition apart, and you compare what's happening with Biden and contrast, I guess, with FDR and LBJ, and sort of like place this moment. Just walk us through that. It basically centers around the idea of guns and butter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a kind of classic question in economics: can you have both guns and butter? And it sort of, like many questions, depends on when. And I think FDR, the sort of most important American president of the last century, was able to kind of have guns and butter, but under the very special circumstances that you first had the Great Depression, which the nation flat on the back, and then World War II, and you had to basically defeat Nazism, which is very important to do. And within that context of the nation really needing a lot of stimulus, was able to do sort of like a guns and butter program, Social Security, but also making America into a superpower. Now the thing is, after that, it becomes a dilemma, because once you're at a healthier economy, you kind of have to choose. There's only so much resources to go around, and I think it's an unfortunate and tragic choice that after Roosevelt, the sort of presidents that came in, starting with Truman, but really coming to a peak with Lyndon Johnson, basically thought that they could square the circle by something that scholars call military Keynesianism. So this is basically the idea that you can get the sort of Keynesian stimulus by just spending a lot of money on the military, and that's gonna so you can get both, right? Truman did it with the big sort of arms buildup for the Korean War, and Lyndon Johnson tried to do the same thing. The problem is, once you're at full economy, if you do that, you're going to get inflation, and you're going to get all sorts of destabilizations in the system. And that's kind of what happened with Lyndon Johnson. I mean, in addition to all the moral atrocity of the Vietnam War, there's simply the fact that, he really created a lot of budgetary and inflation problems that really came back to bite the Democrats in the ass, and created the precondition for all the austerity of the 1970s. And Biden, his mind is really in 1963. I don't think his mind has changed since then, and he's trying to replicate what Lyndon Johnson is doing.
Well, I'll tell you, so I'm a little skeptical from the economic perspective that we can't have guns and butter now because I mean, because the I mean, just our monetary system works differently than in those two occasions. But to me, the problem is from a political standpoint in terms of the coalition that Biden needs to defeat Trump and the Democrats really need to defeat the Republicans. This idea of, what's going on in Israel and that's sort of like maybe the open-endedness. I think there's a lot more play in terms of the Ukraine issue. And I'm speaking only from a political standpoint. Let's, for a moment, like,
Sure.
put aside these other issues. But as a political, within the context of the coalition, it feels like this is much more problematic in terms of like the political notions than certainly for FDR and arguably for LBJ.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, I think LBJ, when he was starting out in 64, 65, there wasn't a big anti-war movement, but he certainly helped create it, right? And he certainly and that led to like real political dilemma for people like Martin Luther King Jr., where, obviously he was very supportive of the Great Society and the Civil Rights Act, but then he found himself like he had to break with Lyndon Johnson and say the Vietnam War is too much. That's a hard thing to do, to break with a president that has given you stuff that you want. And Biden has recreated that dilemma. Biden is no Lyndon Johnson or Franklin Roosevelt, but actually in terms of what he's given us, it's more than any Democrat since Lyndon Johnson, right? Like he has actually really made some good interventions in the economy, especially on climate. But are people gonna buy the bargain that he's selling them? Which is if you want my economic policies, you have to also buy blowing up hospitals in Gaza. Well, I don't know how many people are going to do that. Like Martin Luther King Jr. did not accept the idea that if he wanted the Civil Rights Act, he had to accept firebombing Hanoi. At some point, people within your coalition, people who are don't want unjust wars, are going to break with you. So in that sense, Biden has recreated the problem.
Well, the coalition here is, I think, key, right? Because I think before October 7th and before Israel's, genocidal response, as scholars are determining it here, if they are not stopped, there was, I would say, a significant path forward with a fairly robust coalition where you could have taken away a lot from these recent elections, where you could ride abortion to a victory, even if the person at the top of the ticket people are largely ambivalent about. You would be able to have a coalition of young people motivated to vote against Trump via negative partisanship, more like 2020, as opposed to staying home and depressing that kind of turnout, getting Democratic partisans, traditional voters, plus young people who don't want to see Trump in office. So more of a replication of 2020 with high turnout. Biden desperately needs high turnout, right? And that is a major problem if you're going to depress some percentage of the population who doesn't want to sign on to what many young people honestly feel is a genocide. And you can say, that's not rational. Trump is worse. I agree Trump is worse. But that's not going to be persuasive in getting many people to vote, right? Because we know this time and time again, you can't browbeat people into voting in the way that they should. It's all about, how people respond emotionally to these things.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And people, it's not just a matter of emotion. I think people are right to kind of draw a line.
Sure.
I mean, as I said, I go back to the King dilemma. Lyndon Johnson gave the American left, almost everything they could have wanted. But if you're destroying whole villages in Vietnam, how can you sign on for that? How can you think of yourself as a moral person if you make that devil's bargain? And people are very upset at this, and for good reasons. it's an interesting question. Like if this war hadn't broken up, I do think you're right that the coalition could have kept together. I still have questions about the guns and butters things because I actually think that you have to have some priority in government spending. I think what Biden and Jake Sullivan and Blinken are thinking is they can recreate the Cold War. They can recreate the idea that we have to fight China, so we're going to get Republicans on board to finance a lot of infrastructure spending, a lot of scientific research, and we'll get rid of the gridlock. I don't think that would work. I don't think Republicans are on board for that. We certainly already saw that with right. Ukraine spending. And, I actually don't think if you think about what the priorities we actually need to spend money on, building solar panels. We need to build a Green New Deal. And you don't get a Green New Deal by funding the Pentagon to $1 trillion. That's just not the path forward.
What do you think? I mean, there are cables now coming in from ambassadors in the Middle East, U.S. ambassadors that are being leaked, saying that this is, they're appalled and sort of shocked at what Biden's doing. There are 1,000 State Department workers essentially who are, releasing letters type of situation. And there was this piece in the Huffington Post today about congressional members of Congress, Democratic members of Congress, sort of completely caught off guard about the politics here. I just want to read this one graph from it. Another staffer said it did not occur to her superiors that some constituents would have personal ties to Gaza, which she realized when a caller said the bombardment had just killed most of his friend's family. The statement we're authorized to use doesn't contain any sympathy, the staffer said. It isn't part of any statement to say, I'm sorry that happened to you. She went off script to tell the caller she was sorry. An astounding number of callers say they are committed to never voting for their member again unless they support a ceasefire, several staffers said. Some constituents even promised to go further and mobilize friends and neighbors to vote against them. Some members equally fervent in believing this will blow over. It really feels, I mean, just, again, strictly as a political matter, that the president and Democratic leaders in the Senate, Bernie Sanders, and members of Congress really had maybe no sense of how committed Netanyahu was to staying in office, which means ongoing killing until people forget that he should, be going to jail, and that there would be this kind of reaction from the American public.
Yeah, no, I think one way to see this, the prism to use, is gerontocracy. That the sort of the president, the Senate, and the Congress are much older than the American people, and that's more true of the Democrats than of the Republicans. And so I think that a lot of these people, their mental universe is 1967 or 1973, when there was kind of very strong, full throttled American support. And among older people, there is more of that. But among younger people, if you're under 30 or under 40, the only Israel you've ever known is Netanyahu and Sharon, right?
Yeah.
The only Israel you've ever known is the one that's bombing Gaza. And certainly younger people especially have a lot more friends that are multicultural, coming from different backgrounds, and just have are more in line with the rest of the world, really. So you have a sort of democratic leadership that was totally caught off guard by the fact that a large part of their base, their constituency, is not on board of this. There's overwhelming support among Democratic voters for a ceasefire and more broadly for an even-handed approach, for the United States being even-handed. I honestly think there's possible explanations of donor class and stuff like that. But I honestly think the explanation is that Biden and unfortunately Bernie Sanders are living in a mental universe that is far in the past.
Yes, and you also see that in the coalition of those who are supporting a ceasefire in the House. Not one white member is supporting a ceasefire. It is all progressive POCs who are behind a ceasefire at this point. And like, is there any kind of pause from the gerontocracy to understand, like, are we racist? Are we racist? Like, are we discounting the views of black and brown people in this country who feel an intrinsic kind of solidarity with Palestine and what they've experienced? And is it because they're just all anti-Semitic all of a sudden? Or is it because they see something in the Palestinian people that is reflected in their own domestic experiences or the experiences of their ancestors or their family?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. There is a very sharp kind of racial divide, which ties in with the generational divide. With people of color being generally younger, and yeah, I just don't think the lived experience of like the actual voters that the Democrats need is apparent to like most members of Congress, except. And then this might bring us to the next point through their staff. Like they do have staff that is much younger. And even in the State Department, they are like younger people. And so I think you're seeing an interesting sort of mutiny within the sort of lanyard class. Like the people who are like within the establishment at the bottom rungs of the ladder are kind of like, they're really not on board with this.
Yeah, it's interesting. And of course, from the perspective of like the upcoming 2024 election, aside from some third or fourth or fifth party folks who are, they don't have a chance of winning. It's not like there's a different position staked out by Donald Trump here. I mean, it really is sort of hard to assess. And you did also write a piece about this isn't your father's Republican Party, it's your grandfather's Republican Party in terms of their perspective on so-called isolationism and war. But this, in addition to what we've been hearing about their Latin American sort of, aspirations during some of these debates, the Israel sort of like puts to lie the idea that this is the anti-war party that the Republicans have sort of mutated into. Just talk a little bit about that, the similarities and to where the Republicans were maybe, 70, 80, 90, 100 years ago.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, there is this argument. I mean, the reason to address this is that there are people, your friend and mine, Glenn Greenwald, among them, who say, the Republicans are the really anti-war party. They're the ones, who are questioning Ukraine. Like as a way of sort of, getting people to give the Republicans a sort of second thought. But, if you look at where the Republicans currently stand, right? Yes, they're much more supportive of like cutting off funding for Ukraine. But like on Gaza, they're the same or worse. I think there's a representative in Florida, who's when somebody raised a question, how many Palestinians are we going to kill? Said, like all of them, right?
Yes, I saw that clip actually.
She said we played it yesterday. She's the state either senator or representative from where Matt Gaetz actually represents, and the state representative or Senator Nixon is one of the more progressive ones, represents Jacksonville. It was outrageous. And only two other members signed on to her ceasefire resolution in Florida, which just goes to show how, completely hollowed out the Democratic Party is in Florida.
Yeah, no, and so there's that, but if you looked at the debates, I wouldn't encourage anyone to look at the debates, but like all of the Republican candidates were like very, their whole thing in Gaza was finish the job. Which, if you think about what's happening, like finish the job,
right.
Means mass death.
A final solution.
I think that's what we're basically saying. Yeah, this is the final solution for the Palestinian people. I mean,
No. So there's that, And also the Republican position, I mean, on like Mexico, there's a an emerging consensus that not only you have to build a wall, you have to invade Mexico to take care of the cartels. And on China, certainly a lot of hawkishness. And if you circle back to Ukraine, a lot of the arguments for like not funding Ukraine are basically like, well, we have to have resources to fight China and Mexico, right? And we want to split Russia and China apart. So when we do go to war with China, that is we have all our ducks in a row. Now, to me, that's not isolationism. That's not anti-war. It's like you don't want to fight a war in Europe, but you want to fight wars everywhere else. As it happens, what's interesting is that this is like exactly parallel with the policies of the 1930s and 40s that people falsely call isolationism. People are familiar with Charles Lindbergh, the America First movement, Senator Robert Taft. And if you actually study what these people wanted, like they, first of all, were said like, we don't want to be involved with Europe. Like, let's make Mr. Hitler overlord of Europe. If that's what's going to happen, so be it. But we don't want to be involved with Europe because our destiny is in the Western Hemisphere and in Asia. We want to be strong enough to dominate the Western Hemisphere and to expand into Asia. And so my understanding of all this is basically the foreign policy of settler colonialism, right? You don't want to fight other white people. They already have civilizations, and you want to trade with them and make deals with them. You want to make deals with Hitler, and you want to make deals with Putin, right? They see Putin as part of this, the white nations. The destiny of America is to dominate the non-white peoples. It's to dominate resources extraction. Trump, wanted to have coups in Venezuela and elsewhere so he can take the oil, right? It's the take the oil philosophy, which is not an anti-war philosophy, right? and it is a philosophy of seeing America as a white nation with a destiny to rule over the non-white world and to make peace with whoever is the white kingmakers of Europe, whether it's Hitler or Putin.
It's sort of to extend what you were writing about in your first piece. This is not a guns or butter situation. It's a guns or guns sort of doctrine for the Republican Party in this instance. And it is was it earlier?
It has an interesting. It's actually more coherent than the Democrats, right? Like if you say guns and guns, then you have everyone's on board in the Republican Party. They love guns, right?
Right. It's just a question of where do we point them? Which direction are we firing them off in?
So as the Republicans are united on a guns and guns program, Biden is dividing his own party on guns and butter. So, which means that Biden to pursue this foreign policy, which is basically geared towards letting Benjamin Netanyahu do what he wants, in Gaza, is willing to destroy his own coalition, get Trump reelected, and possibly end American democracy.
And it completely undercuts the gains that were made in the withdrawal of Afghanistan and the recognition that our multi-decade policy in the Middle East was a massive failure. I would also say, positioning the United States in support of Ukraine is probably good for, the international community's kind of recognition as the U.S. as a partner in certain situations, because obviously the invasion of Ukraine was so unjust by Russia. But now we're just lighting that on fire, and you hear that these Arab nations are essentially telling the diplomatic partners in the United States, Sam mentioned this earlier, the trust is completely broken. This is ripping open a gaping wound in the Middle East as it relates to U.S. policy that, I don't even know how we're going to be able to close it if Blinken and Biden continue to go down this path.
Yeah, no, that's such a crucial point, and it extends beyond the Middle East. There's a good report on this in the Financial Times a few weeks ago. But basically, in the global South, all the diplomats there, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, they're going to the Americans and saying, "You want us to support Ukraine because of the international liberal order and the idea that you shouldn't invade other countries and the idea of human rights." And look at what you're supporting in Gaza. You're totally full of, what you're full of, right? You're totally full of crap. it's totally hypocritical. Your basic policy is, for the Russians, we want the rule of law. For Israel, anything goes. And so they've totally destroyed like any coherent foreign policy. Like if Biden has a foreign policy that goes beyond just maintaining the empire, it is like, like we're going to restore the international respect for the United States that was lost under Trump.
Yes.
And we're going to restore the idea of an international liberal order where there are rules, where human rights is respected, where democracy is promoted. And like you can't do that and support what you're supporting in Gaza. Like it's a totally you've totally destroyed your own policy.
Do you think that they in the White House are just like, well, we broke it. We broke it already at this point. So, rather than, I don't know, the only example I could use is playing blackjack. You got to decide when you sit down at the table, when I have a 3 and the dealer has a 2, I'm either going to hit every time or I'm not going to hit every time, because otherwise you're not even getting the odds. If you play it like you switch midstream. Do you think that that's like, are they on, is this like a path dependency 4 weeks into this when Gaza has been leveled at this point? Or do you think it's still like there's an opportunity for them to reverse course? Not that it would change the destruction that has already happened, but I guess maybe might mitigate future destruction?
Well, I think the thinking of this is that it might blow over, right? Like I think there's some suggestion that they think like, well, we have to let Israel do this now because they're mad and there's a lot of rage. They have to get this out of their system, and then we'll pull back, and then we'll push for a 2-state solution or some sort of like Palestinian Authority control of Gaza. And then people will forget, right? Like that the election's a year from now. We know people are angry, but this will also blow over. Like and there's a lot of comments from Blinken that kind of suggest that he's already kind of saying like, well, Israel has killed too many Palestinians, right? Like, well, it suggests that like there's a proper number of Palestinians
right,
that you can kill. You hit your quota, buddy. We're going to give you 6,000 and you hit 10,000, whatever. But I do think that is the philosophy, that they can ride this out. And I'm not sure that they can ride this out. Like, I'm not sure that people are going to so easily forget this. And also, I have to say, there's no coherent strategy. Like, what the hell is going to happen? Like, Israel's goal is supposedly to destroy Hamas. And then what happens? Like, who are you going to put in charge of Gaza?
Doesn't the Biden administration? I mean, I can understand how they think this could blow over because we killed far more in Iraq, and by the time you get to like 2000, I don't even think 2006 was about the Iraq War as much as it was about Foley. The Foley cover up and the taking over Congress and, his predatory behavior, Mark Foley on the pages or whatever it was. But like you could be walking around in 2005 and there was no, we're actively killing people and it wasn't, it was almost like no longer a part of our politics. But don't they aren't they savvy enough to realize like we've talked to a couple of reporters from Israel, and if people spend 10 minutes reading anything from Israel, like Netanyahu is not going to let this, he's going to keep this alive as long as he possibly can.
Yep.
Because it's the only way he's going to keep out of jail. Like, it's not like we don't have domestically a paradigm for what's going on with Netanyahu.
Oh, the coverage in Israel is infinitely better
But I'm
about
saying,
the
like,
position. But
all
I
you
mean,
gotta do
it's
is look
much clearer
downtown
to
New
them.
York and see what
Yes.
Donald Trump's doing. He wants to stay out of jail too. And like, how do they not realize it's not in Netanyahu's interest to let this blow over?
Yeah, I have no idea what they're thinking, except I would also add that Netanyahu basically campaigned for like Trump in 2020 and has done everything to show that he's aligned with the Republican Party when they're in power, and then he'll try to buddy up to the Democrats. But it is kind of amazing that the United States, Biden has putting the entire interest of the United States, not just in the Middle East, but in the world, because this affects the world. Like, believe me, people in Asia in Africa and Latin America are watching this. He's put the entire interest of the United States in the world, staking it on this like crooked, small-time politician who has a cabinet full of religious fanatics who are like, like slavering after the apocalypse. It's just an amazing decision. I don't know. I mean, I do think the sort of ride it out theory is maybe the sort of the best one, and maybe they also think, like if they let Netanyahu blow off the steam, then they can pressure him later. Like there's usually some sort of calculus that like they're buying some favors from Israel. But I don't know. I don't think that makes a lot of sense to me. But
all right. Well, I just want to pivot to the last piece, and I know you've got only just a couple of minutes here.
Yeah, sure.
But you said that you mentioned with the Republican Party that it was basically their militarism is more settler colonial in its orientation, I guess. And we had somebody on at the beginning. Was it the beginning of the week where we were talking about the doctrine of discovery? And which really gave rise to settler colonialism, and that doctrine of discovery came from Pope in in the 1400s, and now we really have a Speaker of the House who seems to really sort of circle the square, I guess, of the Republican Party, or circle the circle, maybe, of the Republican Party. This guy, short of Mike Pence, is the highest elected theocrat I think that we've ever had in this country.
Yeah, no. And it's so interesting because it really shows you how much good manners can get you in life. Because, like the Republican Party has a lot of people that are like, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Is I think the phrase the kids use. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
They used when we were kids.
Yes, I know.
I don't know if the kids use that now.
or Boebert or Getz, like Jim Jordan, like really like crackpot people. Whereas Mike Johnson comes across as very quiet, very staid, and then you look into his like actual political philosophy, and he's absolutely coming out of the sort of theocratic wing of the Republican Party. There's a kind of, there's been a long-standing movement going back decades of, various theological strands, but they're all basically predicated on the idea that America is a Christian country and that Christians have an obligation to like take over the institutions and Christianize them. The comparable, I think, to certain Islamic movements, who want to Islamicize the state, or comparable actually to the religious right in India and in Israel, right? Like basically these sort of theocratic tendencies, and that is like you just go back through his record, and that's exactly what he stands for, and with all sorts of weird permutations where. There's this thing about how he and his son monitor each other's porn intake, which I love my father, but I would never do that myself. I think there's certain things that you want to keep to yourself. But in any case,
yeah, I mean it's fascinating, and the other sort of like development along those lines is, we saw Rick Santorum say this the other night about democracy. You read stuff that's coming out of like the Claremont Institute. They are really geared up, and Mike Johnson himself was a key instrument in the January 6th like planning and execution and whatnot, and the idea of
he
him,
wanted to legally kind of ratify it. He was on the front lines. Sorry, go on.
And the point being is if he's the Speaker of the House, and everybody, all these Claremont Institute people and the Rick Santorums, who's also sort of a right wing theocrat, from back in the day, Trump becomes their Caesar. I mean, they're actively saying this type of thing.
No. They are actually saying, what we need is a red Caesar, I guess a red state Caesar. And it is, it's interesting on the right. There's a lot of projection going on because they had to actually accuse Barack Obama being like the American Caesar and like, like trying to take over the state. But now they're like, well, actually, we need our own Caesar. And it's interesting, like the even use of metaphor. Like they often, like on January 6th, they use this metaphor, are we going to cross the Rubicon? Where I come from, like crossing the Rubicon is usually seen as a bad thing, right? Like, that was a moment where Caesar came back into Rome and took power. But they're thinking of this as like, oh, well, this is what we want, let's cross that Rubicon. Yeah, no, it's a very dire thing. It is a sort of merger. I mean, I think there's longstanding anti-democratic tendencies in America that are more secular. That are among people on the right who have never liked democracy, have never liked especially multiracial democracy and sharing the country with Black people. But now it's combined with this sort of theocratic argument, and I think one problem with that is like you can't actually have a political argument with someone like that, right? You can't have the give and take of politics, like where you try to reach some sort of settlement. Like they want what they want, and they'll do what they want to get it.
Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation, also a host of the weekly Nation podcast, The Time of Monsters. We'll put a link to all that in our podcast and YouTube description today. Thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it was great. It was great talking to you guys.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half. We watch Jeet try and figure out how to hang up from.
Okay, bye, guys.
So long. And just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you will not only help this show survive and thrive, but you'll also get the free show free of commercials. Although, our reminder, we will put the links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions, so you get those discounts. Also, you can IM the show, where we know that there's a little bit of problems lately with the app, listening to the audio. We are working on that. But you can always take your member link and put it into most of your podcast apps that you have. And retrieve the member show that way to listen to. But anyways, jointhemajorityreport.com, jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, Fairtrade Coffee, and featuring the Majority Report blend.
Ooh.
Yes, impress your friends. It's a great way. It's a great way at Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, to turn your friends onto your family onto the show because, hey, check out this great tasting coffee. Everybody has that after Thanksgiving. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people. Oh, the coffee tastes great. Where'd this come from? It's from Just Coffee. They're a co-op, but this is the Majority Report blend. Oh, I'll listen to that show. What? And then they never talk to you again because they're so pissed off because they're right-wingers.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know. Perhaps the Majority Report blend has some leftist hypnosis powers. And many people are saying.
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay.
Yada, yada, yada says, the app issues, I deleted it and re-downloaded it and worked fine again for me. Just as a heads up to other members having issues. Thank you. Emma!
Yes.
Did a bonus show yesterday for the ESPN.
Oh, I did. And, I'm starting to gain a little bit of ground on Bradley here. So I would like people to go and watch our show, OT, and comment what the punishment should be for either of us who loses this season along competition. If you recall, I had to eat cheese on camera. It didn't go that well. I almost yacked on camera. So what should Bradley or myself, if I'm, completely fall behind, have to do at the end of the season? We're going to go all the way to the Super Bowl. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Also, before we get to Left Reckoning, just a reminder, I'm going to be on the Valley Labor Report in almost exactly an hour and 45 minutes. You can check me out there. I'll be there for an hour. These guys are doing a 32-hour stream to support some strike funds. Podcast. The link is in the descriptions. Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, actually, David Griscom will be on that stream as well. We were supposed to be a little bit earlier and got bumped, so it's just going to be David I think 6 Eastern tonight on that stream as well. And for patreon.com/Left Reckoning, listeners, David and I are going to be finishing up our reading of the Communist Manifesto, a third part of that reading. Patreon.com/stuffedreckoning.
Folks, see you in the fern half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder, what a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Oh.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Emma Vigeland, Sam Seder, Majority Report, Fun Half. Do we have that Tim Pool? Is that a tweet that you were talking about?
Oh yeah, it was just a tweet where he said raise the voting.
Let's pop it up. Let's pop it up. We'll
yeah.
start that, and then because I want to get to this Fein stuff, but because it's interesting theory that Tim Pool is promulgating here.
No more voting for Du Bois, only voting for Demench.
Oh, look at that! And Matthew Film Guy was one of the first guys in to comment on it. Or is that just showing up because you follow him? I don't know. How does that work? Why isn't there all the blue checks before that? But here's Tim Pool. Raise the voting age to 30. And you know what's amazing about like some of these guys, like the views that they get are massive. Like Jill Stein, she posted her that she's running, and she got like 3 million views off an account that has the same size as mine. That's a lot of.
Little odd.
Did she pay for a check?
Maybe. I don't. Yeah, probably. That's probably what it is. But raise the voting age to 30. Now let's speculate why he would want to do that.
I think we know why.
Why?
It's all the protests that are pro-terror. That's what I guarantee it's about that.
But but it's not just like, because presumably if you went to the protest and you were 35, you could still vote.
In his mind and in the minds of his audience, they're all freshmen in college.
He doesn't think there's anybody above the age of 30?
I think that's generally the impression all these people like to create.
Because I think what he's trying to say is these people are dumb and they don't have enough life experience and knowledge and responsibility.
And they can learn that by going to Tim Pool's compound.
Skate park.
At age 30.
Hanging out and living on the compound. That's how you get the knowledge as a young person. If you're 18, 19, 20, you need some life experience. You go live on Tim's compound. That's how you know how to vote.
Well, you pick up savviness.
Maybe Jim Jordan will be around for an interview.
Yeah.
You pick up savviness by sitting around with the boys and having some sush.
Yeah, he expanded on this point. I just sent more of what Tim had to say.
Yeah, I want to see, because my guess is he thinks that people under the age of 30 do not have essentially the savvy. I don't know if it would be his word, but I would bet it has to do with like intelligence and common sense, right? Do we have it?
I just sent it in our chat.
Yeah. Pop it up, because I want to see, because I have I think he might be on to something here. Mm-hmm. If it really is, let's see. The stupidest thing is that you have to be 35 to run for president, but you can be 18 to vote for president. How does that even make sense? Either raise the voting. Oh, wait. No, sorry.
Thing I've ever seen.
This is one of the dumbest comments I've ever seen in my life. He's saying that the level of responsibility and experience that you have to be president, to be arguably one of the most powerful people, not arguably, one of the most powerful, if not arguably the most powerful person on the planet, with the ability to, blow stuff up in a way that
command an army
we can't even conceive, is the same as being one of 240 million people, 220 million people who will vote on who should be that person. He's saying it's the same level of responsibility. Every comment I had about what Tim Pool had written is out the window, because I couldn't even conceive, and I got to be fair, I don't hold Tim in the highest regard. Mm-hmm. And even I, with my incredibly low opinion of him, could not come up with that stupid of a reason. You can pop that back up there. This is honestly the stupidest thing is you have to be 35 to run for president, but you can be 18 to vote for president.
You know what we should do? We should essentially have, because 240 million people, or however many people of those are adults who have the opportunity to vote. We should hold national elections to determine if that person individually has the right to vote. We can just do it one by one, since apparently the responsibility of the average voter is the same as the responsibility of the executive of the United States, the president. We should have individual elections on every single person's ability to vote.
Do you think he just posts that to get he just to get to juice his payments out of Twitter because it'll get more interaction? But he's not in any way embarrassed or thinks. What's fascinating is that he doesn't think this is going to impact his audience perspective of him whatsoever.
No, I mean, it's honestly genius, because he's attracting the dumbest morons who would think something like that is deep, and that's who you want to be milking for content.
Do you think that he realizes that, or do you think that he thinks this is a profound idea?
I think this is just what he's always been doing, and it's worked for him, and so that's how he just feels like the universe works.
And he can't imagine anything else, probably because of limited
and also
intellect.
because, since it's seemingly a response in some way to the reaction to Israel's mass indiscriminate bombing of civilians in Gaza, he's just coming to this quite recently, because when I spoke to him in June, he said he didn't know enough to comment on the Israel-Palestine conflict or on Israel generally. The top recipient of our military aid, as he said, he was to the left on me on foreign policy and on war.
Says woman who's really not old enough to vote yet.
I am not,
Isn't
honestly.
it crazy?
One more year?
Isn't it crazy that like kids can ride in cars, but like you have to be 18 to drive it? Like,
Oh, that's nuts.
It is sort of nuts. It's
Either
16
lower
to
the
drive.
driving
16 to
age or
drive.
raise the passenger.
It really,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
makes you think what they're like, why they're trying to control us.
Yeah. Pretty messed up. All right. Let's go to Illinois. This is yesterday. UAW President Sean Fain. He is out in front of, or he's in an event, I should say, in Belvidere, Illinois. This is the site in which Stellantis shut down a plant in, I think it was February of this year. And it will be reopened under the terms of the contract that the UAW negotiated with Stellantis. And I believe it's going to become a one that is going to be